Hey everyone, today I'm taking a look at a game called Matryoshka. So this one came out in 2016 to pretty much no fanfare. This one accommodates 3 to 5 players and takes around 20 minutes to play. So this game is all about Russian dolls. So it's a set collection style game with a little bit of trading, and it's purely made up of cards. So the setup is going to look like this, where you just got this deck of cards in the middle of the table. And the size of that deck is going to depend on that player count. So of course with 3 players, you're going to have fewer cards in there than if the game was at 5 players. Each player is going to get given 6 cards to start with that look like this. So these have been randomly allocated, and of course these would be secret from the other players, but for display purposes or for lessons purposes, I've decided to show these face up. And they're going to look like this. So you've got different colours, and they're all numbered from 1 to 7. And the idea is that we're trying to get sets of these dolls, not only of consecutive numbers, but also of the same numbers. So there's only one of each type, but if I had, say, a 4 of this doll and a 4 of this doll, then I'm going to refer to this track at the end. And because I've got two of the same, that'll be 2 points. But of course, as the game develops, I'm going to be getting more and more of these cards, or that's the aim at least. So let's take a look at how the actual game plays. So it's quite a weird game and it has some differences to a lot of other card games like this. So first off, out of your starting hand, you are going to choose 2 of those cards to display to the other player. So for example, I might choose to do this here and show these 2 here. And the other people are going to be doing this at the same time. And then starting from the first player, you are going to choose a card to put into the middle of the table to show that, you know, I'm not too fussed about this card. You can potentially take it off me. So let's say I gave this one away and say that I'm willing to trade this one. And then the other players are going to blindly, or at least from the hand, choose a card and put it face down as an offering to the first player. So I would secretly have a look at these and pick which one I want. Of course, bearing in mind the scoring that I'm going to want in the first place. So this one, for example, might be a good one for me to take because I already have a couple of this set already, and this could fill that gap in to get me more points at the end. So let's say I take this card, I'd add it to my hand. The other player who offered me that would get this card, and this one would go back to the other player. And then what you're going to do is you're going to play that with the other players as well. And once that's done, you're going to take your display back into your hand. You're going to draw another 2 cards for the next round, and then you are going to do the same thing again. But with each round, you're going to start displaying more and more cards. So in the second round, you are going to display 4 cards. So again, as the game goes on, you're kind of painting a bigger picture about what cards you want and which cards you've kind of invested in. So let's say in the next round, I might put this 3 out. I'll put this 6 and a 7 out. I'll not show the 5 because I don't want to be too obvious in terms of, you know, if I have a 4, I'll get a whole bunch of points. So it's all about trying to be what you're willing to show, so that other people give you something that they want, but not to show too much because of course they don't want you to win and have all those points. So let's just say I picked this card here. And then, of course, it'll go through the same motions again. I'll choose a card to offer. So let's say I chose this 4. The other players put cards out like this. Oh, there we go. And we would do the same thing again. So that's going to be how the game's going to play out. But for each round, you're going to be displaying more and more cards. At the end of 4 rounds, when you're displaying a massive 13 cards, final scoring is going to be calculated and the winner will be determined. So just as a demonstration, let's show you how scoring is going to work. So at the end of the game, your display is going to look something like this, if you've not played very well, that is. And you're going to refer to your scoring card here. So this first row, because I've got a single card here on its own, it's going to score me nothing. And I'm scoring rows here, but I've got a set of 3 here. So I'll refer to this one and that'll get me 4 points. This one again will get me another 4 points because I've got a set of 3. That one's going to score me nothing. This set of 4 here is going to score me 7 points. And then you're going to do the same thing with the columns. So a column of 2 is going to score me 2 points. That's 2 there. A column of 3 is going to score me 4 points. So that's my best column there. And I've also got another 2 here. And of course, the player with the most points is going to be the winner. But that's going to be how the game's going to play out. So it's only 4 rounds and they're all pretty rapid. So it's a pretty quick game. So let's talk about how I feel about Matryoshka. So First off, this actual display system is actually pretty cool. I've not really seen any game that does this before, where you have to kind of show what you can do, but not give too much away, because you do want to be obvious enough to show that, please give me a good card and I'll make it worth your while. But at the same time, you don't want to be too obvious in having 6 cards and just needing that 7th, because somebody is not going to give you that 7th card if that's what you need. So that kind of bluffing, or kind of semi-bluffing, is quite interesting, and you do have to be quite careful about how you're going to play that. So I really do like that. There is quite a bit of randomness as well, in terms of, you are just top decking 2 cards off the top of the deck each round, but that's perfectly fine. You have got that mitigation of swapping them out if you want to and offering them to the other players, because the game is actually pretty well scaled and balanced depending on that player count, because there's only a few sets anyway, so if you don't want something, the likelihood that another player will want it is quite high. So I do like the way that works, and it is quite a nice, concise game. The decisions here as well, they are pretty obvious, but sometimes you've got to weigh up about what you're going to do. If you're going to bite off more than you can chew, are you going to go for these columns? Are you going to try to divert and get a massive row here? Are you going to go for more little sets? So of course you're always incentivized to go for these big sets, but to do that, and if you have breakages in between them, then it might not pay off. So it really is, or you can put a lot of weighting into getting a single card, and that kind of reverts back to not being too obvious about that card that you want. So there is a little bit of memory here as well, where you've got to remember which card you've given away, because maybe your opponents aren't going to display that card next turn. So you've got to try and weigh up what they've got in your mind, or in their hand, sorry. But of course, as the game develops, not only you're acquiring more cards, but you're displaying more cards as well. So you have got that kind of cloak and dagger, that shadows of what has they got, what are they trying to go for, and how are you going to play it. So I do quite like the decisions here, and the tempo and the pacing of the game is quite interesting, and it always keeps you guessing. The actual uptime of the game as well is top notch, really, because you are just putting a display out, providing an offering from your hand, and either choosing to take one of your opponents, and that's going to happen, of course, depending on the player count, as many times, and then you go straight on to the next round. So for this, in a 20-minute game, as the box advertises, is definitely accurate. This doesn't stay very long on the table, and you can get a game of this one dusted off pretty quickly. And player interaction is not massive in the game. It is, of course, just depending on what you're going to give your opponent, trying to incentivize them into giving you something good so that you do take their offer, but of course not helping them too much, as I keep going back to. So yeah, there is a good amount of interaction here, not masses, but it does work pretty well. The aesthetics of the game is fine. It's not the most stunning game ever, but I suppose the way that these kind of grow up slightly in size is quite thematic, I suppose. But the dolls themselves do look a little bit weird. I don't quite like the look of them. I think they could have been slightly better illustrated, or slightly more inviting. They look a bit creepy. But I don't mind it at all. All the iconography and you can tell what each set is quite clearly at a glance. So it could have been, it definitely could have been a lot worse, and I've got no issues at all. And the actual card quality is pretty decent, to be honest. Yeah, they're not bad cards. The setup and teardown time is really quick. It just depends on the player count. You're going to take a few of the sets out of the deck to scale it, but as you'd expect with a card game, you can get this set up in just a minute or two. And I do like the sense of progression in this one, in terms of constantly displaying stuff and always working towards something. So it does feel like quite satisfying when you get a whole row of 7, and that kind of forward momentum of trying to get that last card of your set is quite fun to chase after. So yeah, overall, this isn't anything revolutionary, but it's pretty clever in what it does. It's simple, it's fast, it has that little bit of back and forth in terms of trading cards. I like that kind of, again, going back to that smoke and mirrors thing about, I'm showing that I'm going for this, but maybe I'm going for something else, and you keep on giving me cards to boost that set. So I do like the way that works. It's quite clever. It's pretty unique, actually. I can't think of anything else that does that, and it flows very quickly. It's not the most intuitive of games when you teach it for the first time, but once you get it out your system and you understand how it works, then it actually does flow wonderfully. So I actually do like this game. It was a blind buy for us, so we didn't know anything about it before we picked it up, and it's surprisingly good. So if you want a relatively unknown and affordable card game, that's a little bit different but still familiar, then I would recommend checking out Matryoshka. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.